It is my prayer that you're having a good day, that you are enjoying what you're doing, and most importantly, that you are enjoying your relationships. Now, we've been talking about affair-proofing your marriage, and that's a vast subject. So I'm just touching here and there and giving you one or two tips. Let me read a quote that the choices we make every day dictate the life that we lead. To thine own self be true. To thine own self be true. And I think that is the theme that I have had throughout this talking about protecting your marriage from affairs, is that be true to yourself. Effective communication, things like being honest about your feelings, things like knowing where you have come from, how you have developed certain habits and certain ways of living. Listening to your spouse, very, very important, because when you make those choices every day, to listen or not to listen, to take her seriously or not, to respect him or not, those choices are actually building something within your marriage. So be very, very careful what are the choices that you're making every time you're interacting with your spouse. After the interaction, and if you feel, normally we can tell that that interaction was not very positive, go back and repair it and say, hey, I really feel like maybe I said something to vex you, or I said something that upset you, and I want to apologize. I want you to know I didn't intend it, and I don't want you to feel bad. You are my person, and I want to protect you from that. So when we do these repairs and not leave things to simmer and fester within our hearts, then our hearts continue to grow fond of each other, because fondness and admiration of our spouses is one of the ways that we protect ourselves from seeking those very things, because those are real human needs within a relationship. The feeling of being acceptable, the feeling of being loved and cherished and honored, as well as valued. And we can do that, we can communicate that through fondness and admiration. So let me talk a little bit about effective communication. Now, for communication to be effective, the messenger, the person who sent the message, needs to make sure that the message that the receiver received is what they intended them to hear. So a lot of times when we send a message, if there is no follow-up, as in, did you hear what I said? Can you repeat to me what you heard me say? If there is no clarification, if there is no feedback, if there is no checking in to see whether they got what you meant, then what happens? It gives way for interpretation of what you might have meant. So it's important to use these tips that I'm going to share when you are in a conversation with your spouse. Number one, when they send the message, it is important for you to tell them back what they said, especially if you're not very sure. Especially if your spouse, or in your communication with each other, there is a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of times what happens when there is misunderstanding in the way that we are sharing information with one another, we tend to get stuck in trying to explain ourselves. But we are not saying, okay, this is what I'm hearing you say. So it's important to reflect back. We call it reflecting back. Reflect back to your person what they said. So they said, lately I have been feeling lonely. Don't go into, kwa nini sasa unasikia? Why are you feeling lonely? I'm here for you all the time. I do, and we go on defending. The best way to deal with that is to say, what I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling lonely. Yes, I am feeling lonely. And then I will validate. When I hear that, then I will validate. That must be awful to feel lonely within your own marriage. And when you do that, when you validate, then you open up for both of you to feel safe to share. And even me, I have also been feeling that we have gone a little apart. And I've been wondering, is it stress at work? You haven't been talking as much as you normally talk. This is called validation. We are not fighting about it. We are actually trying to understand the problem. Then we also have what we call clarification. So somebody tells you something and you're not very sure. Before you already assume what they meant, you are not very sure. Ask them. Ask them. Don't ask them why would you think that? No. The word why always brings about a fight. Just say, let me clarify what I heard. I thought you said 1, 2, 3. And let the person say, no, that's not what I said, not what I meant. I may have said the words, but what I meant is, and I say that. And then the other thing that you want to make sure that you do is to summarize. After you have listened to that person, they are talking about feeling lonely, feeling stressed at work. Don't give them a lot of you should do this, you should do that. No, make sure that you tell them, what I heard you say is that there is this project at work, you are feeling overwhelmed, and that's why you haven't been communicating with me. And then you will say, thank you for sharing that with me. Now I understand why you've been quiet. That conversation is not going to go into a fight. But if we are always anxious, we are always thinking the worst of each other, then we will always go into fights. The other day I had somebody ask me, can you tell me why me and my wife, we cannot talk about anything? We are always fighting. And I told him, it's because the two of you are more interested in what you think than what the other person thinks. So show interest. The prayer, I think it's called Desiderata. The person who wrote that prayer, he says, seek to understand more than to be understood. Seek to be kind more than to receive kindness. Seek to love more than to be loved. When we do that, when I have interest in what my spouse is saying, when I have empathy and I try to understand where they are coming from, then we can get into this intimate place where emotionally we feel each other, emotionally we are there for each other, we have connected, and we don't need outside help to be able to do this. Now, finally, let me say this. Always clarify why you are sharing what you are sharing with your spouse. It could be that you are sharing so that the both of you can identify a solution. So you might start your conversation by saying, there is something I need to share with you, and this what I need to share with you, I want us to find a solution. Are you in a space where we can discuss? And then but most of us, what we do, we live in our heads, we overthink things, and we are waiting until that person gets to the door, and then we pounce on them. That conversation will not go anywhere. It will just be a fight. But you can take control of the situation and you say, I really need to vent about something, so I don't need your solutions. I don't need us to find a solution for this one. I just want to talk. And then the other person can say, okay, I can do that. Let's go ahead. And then make sure that as you listen, you give feedback. Now, there are times when you need a solution and you need to say, this time, I need us to find a solution. If you have a spouse who is always defensive, you can start by telling them, there is something I need to tell you, and I know that sometimes when the way I speak to you, you tend to feel like I am attacking you. I promise you, I'm not blaming you, I'm not attacking you. I just need to talk. Are you in a position that you can listen? And these little things, if we do little things like that, our communication will be better, it will be more effective, and we will be more interested in talking to one another. A lot of us, we are staying away from talking in relationships because we always end up in a fight. Who wants to fight all the time? It's exhausting. And so if you can put into place part of this, some of these tips that I'm sharing with you, it can help you a lot. And so until I see you next time, I hope that you have a great time, that you enjoy the time you have in your relationships, that these tips can help you in one way or another. Subscribe to our channel, call, leave a comment, and we will be glad to support you in any way that we can. Until next time, may God bless you.